How many of you have sent a text to someone in the same house? Raise your hand. All right, that's everybody. How about the same room? All right. How many would say this is a time-saving device? All right, a little more hesitation. Some of you are looking at me like, is that a trick question? I promise it's not. My daughter, Grace, is the busiest person I know. She's 14 years old. The other night, we're having a discussion around a week that was causing some angst. She's in school, sports, activities. I mean, some of you know the drill well. And I suggested, well, maybe you set your phone aside early evening and, just so that's not a source of distraction. She readily agreed, set it on the counter, and I'm working on the other side of the room, and I hear this bzzz, bzzz, this thing's on vibrate, bzzz, bzzz, bzzz. My goodness, this was a slice of the always-on world. There are now 8 billion mobile devices and connections. That's more than the population of the planet. Mobile data traffic's grown 4,000-fold in the last just 10 years alone. And there are 200 billion smart devices that will soon be connected. We'll soon surpass that number. Amazing. And by any measure, these capabilities have done amazing things for us. They pulled 3 billion additional people into the global discussion. They've enabled even small organizations to innovate and create and grow new markets. And they prevented countless arguments between couples over whether to pull over for directions or not. But is there another side to this story? What are all these messages, I asked Grace? Some were a group chat in an ice skating team she's involved in. Some were just Snapchats with friends. All fine. She said, Dad, if you open a Snapchat and don't respond, the sender knows it. You can be a 14-year-old, you can be a CEO, you can be the head of state. If you don't take control of the always-on world, it will very quickly become a cruel taskmaster. In fact, researchers in the medical community are sounding the alarm that compulsive checking of our devices involves the same part of our brains as addictions. The human biorhythms that have been part of our existence from the beginning are being displaced by a digital rhythm, a nascent, different rhythm. I've made my living working with organizations who are facing much the same thing as they deliver customer service. We invent these devices and we love them, we use them, and that opens up access and impacts our culture and expectations, and that whets the appetite for newer, faster, better devices, which impacts our culture and expectations, which puts us like hamsters on a wheel, always needing to respond, always connected, always on. Some of the organizations I work with and their customer service approach are top in their sectors for customer satisfaction, and others struggle. But I'll tell you, I can't sit on a plane. If the person next to me asks, what kind of work do you do? They'll to a person say, oh, you need to go work with so-and-so or such and such a company. And they'll have a story. And those stories can so quickly reach the world. We're so connected. They can so quickly do brand damage. The stakes for all of us, for organizations and individuals, are so high. So we ask, well, how do we get here? How do we manage this? And I've noticed organizations and individuals accomplishing the extraordinary ask a little different question, a little better question. How do we leverage this? How do we ensure this always-on environment is working for us? And I've observed there are three critical parts to that answer. And one is focus. From the time I was this high, I've loved everything about aviation and flying. I took some time out after college to work on getting a pilot's license, put a lot of hours in, studied. I will never forget the day the FAA inspector showed up. He leapt out of his car right on time, clipboard in hand, introduced himself. He said, let's get to work. And it's a 3-hour process, hour and a half thereabouts on the ground in the flight room. File a flight plan, show me how to check the weather, what altitude you need to be passing through this or that airspace. And all that seemed to go fine We then went flying, went out to a rural area. He said, okay, do a figure 8 for me, do a power on stall, do a power off stall. That's where you put the aircraft into such a steep climb, it loses airspeed. It literally loses the ability to fly. It drops over. It's just in a free fall. You have to know how to get out of it. Taking Dramamine is always a great idea before those exercises, which I remember to do. And we're heading back then to the airport. And I'm thinking, I've got this thing in the bag. We're lined up for that first approach, and I assume we'd do several, which is what we did. And he looked over at me and he asked, what's your rate of descent? Sorry? And he gets out the clipboard, I hadn't seen that yet, and writes a note. We land, we take off, we're going around the pattern, and the questions came faster and faster. He's writing, he's on page 2, and then he's on page 3. What's your altitude? What are you doing with the flaps? What's the deal with the carb heat? I didn't understand. All I could do was focus. We landed, I taxied in, my heart's in my stomach. I saw my dream disappear. I shut the aircraft down, I'm under the right wing, tying things down, and he's sitting in the right seat doing paperwork. And I see him with my certificate, and he turns it over, and he signs it. And he throws me the keys and says, congratulations, Brad, you're a pilot. Really? I thought I was failing. He winked at me, he said, yeah, I like to mix things up a little bit. He said, look, here's the thing. I've got 2 more of these today. I've got 3 tomorrow. There's going to be a time when everything conspires on you. The lights in the air will look like the lights on the ground because it's dusk. There's some weather. There's some traffic. Your family will be in the plane. It'll be distracting. I've got to know you will focus. And he taught me a lesson that day I will never forget. Focus is a choice. And focus is defined by purpose. I will get my family safely to this destination today on this flight. I will be involved in my daughter's world as she grows up. I'll be a part of her future. I will build an insanely great company. And focus becomes a point of reference then for a second trait, a second part of the answer I see without fail. And that's learning and adapting. But in organizations, learning and adapting often takes the form of simplifying. Simplifying is easy to say. It's hard to do. The research group Siegel and Gale puts together what they call the Global Simplicity Index, and it ranks companies based on how easy it is from a consumer's perspective to understand the brand and to engage with them. So think Southwest Airlines, Trader Joe's, Google, Apple. They're all examples of strong organizations in their sectors for simplicity. They take these leaders, they put them into a model stock portfolio, and they compare it to the broad indices here in the US and in several other countries. And here's what it looks like in recent years. 293% return on the Simplicity Index versus, for example, 105% on the S&P, the broad-based S&P. Steve Jobs famously made simplifying part of his strategy, the main part of his strategy, when he returned to Apple and turned the company around. And so can you and I. Choose to stop adding and adding. If large organizations with scale and with resources know they can't do or be all things, maybe that's a pretty good clue for us. Choose to simplify. A third part of the answer that I see without fail is engagement. We've got to engage. We can go forward with purpose. We can simplify around that, but we've got to go out and engage with purpose. I did some work in Europe recently, and I flew Delta and KLM, partner airlines. And on my return, my connection was at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. So a bunch of flights came in, including mine, and we're all lined up for a passport check in Terminal E. You have to go through this check before you can get on North American-bound flights. And for whatever reason, it was really busy that morning. So all these flights came in, and there are 8 or 10 customs officials, and they're doing everything they can to process this. But I did what you would probably do in that situation. I'm looking at my watch and thinking, all right, we're moving this fast, and I've got a connection in 55 minutes. I'm not sure this is going to work. Now, KLM engages with their customers with purpose. And one of the channels they use is Twitter. They use a lot of different channels. One is Twitter. They try to be where their customers are, and as that would make sense for the needs that come up. And they've got a very innovative service. You go to their Twitter page, you'll see an estimated response time. 25 minutes in the sample I grabbed for this. That's for normal customer service issues. But if there's something that deserves immediate attention, they'll prioritize it. They triage these inbound tweets from their customers. So I sent them a tweet. Terminal e-passport check really backed up, may miss flights. It wasn't 2 minutes later that 5 employees in KLM Blue ran in and started directing traffic. Minneapolis, who's going to Minneapolis? Come on up, who wants you in this line? Detroit, who's going to Detroit? Okay, you guys are fine. If you'll wait right here, we'll get to you. We'll get you all to that plane. Thank you so much. It was awesome. I've been taking full credit for everyone making their connection that morning. But KLM engages with purpose, and so can you and I. A friend recently was lamenting, my kids only respond via text. I call them, I leave voicemail, they get right back with text. I chuckled, I said, well, maybe that's your channel then. That's how to engage. What if we were to put some thought into this? Picture a piece of paper, and you can literally do this. One column, label stakeholders, business term, but stakeholders in our worlds, our friends, our family, customers, employees. And in the other column, what would engagement look like? What channel makes sense? Under what circumstances? Maybe it's text with the kids. Maybe it's really kicking that blog up and into place for the customers. Maybe it's some social channels for your friends and family. That begins to make sense and becomes clear and it becomes fun when we've got a purpose and we're simplifying around the things that matter most. In the business world, it's called a customer engagement strategy or a customer access strategy. And I've seen what it can do for companies from A to Z, Apple to Zappos. And it works for us as well. And it's working for Grace. She's excited. Like, I can take control of this. Let me leave you with this challenge. Think through these 3 questions. What is your focus? What's the purpose that's driving that focus? How will you learn and adapt as new things come along? We're just getting started. I mean, we've seen the tip of the iceberg for what's coming. It's exciting. And how will you then engage with purpose? And I'm not here to tell you what your purpose should be, but what I do know and what I'd strongly suggest to you is this. You got to live your life on purpose, to get off the hamster wheel, to get away from the bzz, bzz, bzz. If you're on target in an always-on world, the always-on world's your friend. It opens up unprecedented connectivity and the opportunity to thrive and to really further those things that matter the most. Thank you very much.